Hello, welcome back to the shed. It's me, Drew, again. So, this week the topic was slightly inspired by, primarily inspired by, a video that Defiant Pipes Max did. And he was talking about getting a new lighter. Now, if you haven't watched his video, go watch that. It's a great little funny, quick video. But it was interesting how I started it. And he was talking about getting a new lighter. And talking about buying an expensive IM Corona. And it kind of brought up the thought to me of utility versus luxury. Now, we should probably start off with a little bit of defining utility and luxury. Now, with utility, when I looked it up, the definition, there's 12 different definitions, but I found the one that applies here best, and that is utility. Designed chiefly for use or service rather than beauty or high quality. And then that one of luxury, a material object, service, etc., conducive to sumptuous living, usually a delicacy, elegance, or refinement of living rather than a necessity. Now, if we look at that, we can see that pipe smoking in and of itself is a luxury. It's not something that's a necessity. For most of us, that is. And speaking of a luxury, that brings me to what I'm smoking today. It is a J.M. Boswell Freehand with some nice plateau at the stem there and on the top. And in it, I am smoking some Orlik Golden Sliced. Now, if we excuse the fact for a moment that pipe smoking is a luxury and look at it as more of a utility task, then that brings us to light some, because truly pipe smoking nowadays is a luxury. If we were a utility tobacco user, we'd probably either be smoking cigarettes or using smokeless tobacco as our primary means of tobacco. But, so, Max in his video thought it was rather interesting that people spend $200 plus on a lighter, and I tend to agree. I think it is rather amusing and probably pretty silly. But then we get to, okay, in pipe smoking, what is utility and what is a luxury? So we have our lighters. Do we use something like this? This is a little Jeep disposable lighter. I like them a little bit more than Bic because you can adjust the flame on them. That's just me. Bic does the same purpose. Or do we even go more utilitarian than that and speak of matches? Or wait for lightning and just happen to get some lightning and put it on a stick and then get our smoke started that way. If that was the case, we probably wouldn't be smoking very much. Or do we use something a little bit more fancy? Like this guy here. This is the lighter you usually see me using. This is a Caribe Cabuto. It's a fantastic lighter, but it by no means the most expensive lighter. You know, you want to see expensive. Look at some of the Corona models, Dunhills, Sillums, and oh god, ST DuPonts. Who in the world can spend $1,000 on a lighter? And I think that actually moves us from luxury into just straight up ridiculous opulence, if you can afford one of those. So, we keep those things in mind. Or is it with our pipes? What's utility? Do we smoke something like this, a corn cob, which they smoke really well, and I'm a new initiate to the corn cob? Or do we smoke something fancy like this, a freehand, made by hand by an artisan pipe maker? And I think with pipe smoking being a hobby, it gets down to really what brings you the most enjoyment. Because I certainly don't smoke a pipe because it's a utility to me. I smoke it because it is something slightly luxurious and that brings me pleasure. So if we look at things that way, and even in our lives, if we tried to merely live a utilitarian life, and I know I've done videos on simplicity before, but I think utilitarianism and simplicity are a little bit different. But if we tried to live a utilitarian life, so it would be, and we use one of those newfangled terms, off the grid. So we'd probably live off the grid, out in the woods, up in the mountains somewhere. We probably wouldn't even have a rifle. We'd have a slingshot to go hunt rabbits with. We'd be starting our fire to cook that with flints and pine needles and pine cones and things like that. And we'd be cooking that rabbit over the fire just straight up without a pot. And that probably would be the most utilitarian you could get in life, or at least in my mind. Now, is that a good thing? Would any of us choose to live a completely utilitarian life? And I think for most of us it'd be rather hard. We'd have to suddenly go into a vacuum from all other outside influences of society. I mean, you couldn't even use toilet paper if it was a completely utilitarian life. You'd be using twigs and leaves. And for that essence alone, I would not choose to live a completely utilitarian life. There are some things in life that do have utility that are of a luxury item, such as toilet paper, brushing your teeth, and personal hygiene products. And I know some might argue that, well, no, personal hygiene products now are a utility. Yes, but if you look back, say, 200 years ago, personal hygiene was a little bit different and it was a more utilitarian society. So I think now that I would consider spending $200 plus on a lighter. I mean, this guy wasn't cheap. It wasn't $200. It was about $75. But I get enjoyment from it. I think because there are some things that we need to gather pleasure from, that spending a little extra isn't always a bad thing. Sure, any old tobacco would do. You know, for some people. Smoke Prince Albert, because you can get it. It's easily available and it's cheap. Alright, you smoke Prince Albert, but I choose not to smoke Prince Albert. And probably what I'm smoking right now is one of the most commonly available tobaccos there is. But it is good. Now, with that being said, I think that all of us could agree that some luxury is a good thing. And not to totally cancel out luxury. Because I know there is a huge drive in some subcultures in the United States and probably throughout the world that one should live on absolutely no more than is exactly necessary. But luxury makes life nice. And for some items, I'm going to choose to continue being luxurious. And so with that, I'm going to leave you with a quote this week from German designer Jill Sander. I'm convinced that there can be luxury in simplicity. And with that, my friends, be kind and good to each other.